Aloha. I wanted to make this video in reference to the mindset of these so-called bigger flat earth channels and pose a question directed mostly towards the so-called United States perspective. The people who are in the so-called United States and these so-called truthers and whatever else people proclaim themselves to be in the flat earth community, so-called community specifically, I pose the question to not only the bigger flat earth channels, but every flat earth channel, in asking, how far are you willing to go? How much are you willing to let go of? And where are your perspectives rooted? Where are your ideas of so-called forward progress and change and truth? Where is it coming from? We understand the lies of NASA. We understand the lies of the Federal Reserve. We understand the lies of Christopher Columbus. We understand the lies of the education system, the mainstream media, and even some of these conspiracy theories and so-called conspiracy theorists on the internet. We understand all of that. But from my perspective, there's a deeper storyline that consistently gets avoided, that is very much being triggered on an everyday basis by the status quo of the mainstream media in the status quo of the majority of people, not only in the United States but across the world. And that is this black against white, animalistic, materialistic, military industrial complex, prison industrial complex perspective, this destructive perspective on humanity. Excuse me. This perspective all exists outside of the natural relationships that the indigenous and the aboriginal people were tapped into that predate all of the so-called settlements and colonization of the entire world. And that stuff consistently gets avoided. And I know in a lot of videos I mention this, and I mention it consistently over and over again because it's consistently avoided by the channels. When I called out Mark and Patricia specifically to share their beliefs or their understandings or interpretations of questions like this, it's just kicked to the side because they just call me like a hater or whatever. But outside of all the labels and name calling, what actually gets missed when tens of thousands of people and potentially even millions of people over time don't really hear the perspectives on this? It's hard enough for the individual to find their own perspectives on where they're coming from in reference to the Native American genocide, the Aboriginal American genocide, the Aboriginal Australian genocide, and now Australian looking completely different than what it originally was. A lot of other nations that are so-called third world countries now are third world countries at the hand of these so-called first world countries. A lot of the the people who are rich today and own all of this land, own it at the expense of slavery, modern slavery, destruction, racism, and racism funded, amplified, and legalized by the government. All of these riches that the Federal Reserve is built on top of the blood and the bones of genocide. Why is that not being addressed? Yes, talking about the fiat currency system is very important. Addressing the bankers and all that is very important. But from my perspective, the most powerful perspective that you can come from is the foundation of that power grid. Not the chess and the checker game within the Columbian era of what magic spells they created after they destroyed and stole everything, but really come from the perspective of how did these individuals outside of race, I'm talking about power now for people who still get caught up in there. I mentioned race because race is a very definite mechanism that's used to keep people distracted, fighting themselves and being caught up in the checker game when the three-tiered chess game for the soul and the mind and the body is consistently being distracted from and avoided. So I use that as a trigger to help people think more deeply and reference perspectives that are still very relevant today, and in my opinion are very crucial as far as acknowledging what has happened to not only the people who have been subjected to this heliocentric deception, this haves and have-nots program, but nature itself, relationships to nature itself, humanity as a whole. We're separated from these storylines because we're caught up in the fluff. We're caught up in what we think is more important. And a perfect example of this is a lot of people think that Alex Jones's perspective is the only perspective. He's still coming from the Make America Great Again perspective. He's not saying shit about the Native Americans. He's not saying anything about what's happening on the level and what has happened that predates the so-called perspective of Make America Great Again. He's still caught up in that politics. But many people fall within that category, whether they follow Alex Jones or not, because they haven't gone into the depths of understanding how far this power grid has gone and where it originated. Now, you can trace the origination however far back you want to. What I'm talking about now is the modern alchemy that exists today can be very well titled the Western civilization. And this is where a lot of the creature comforts that keep people quiet are coming from, which is why I see a lot of people avoiding these questions and avoiding these topics and perspectives, because the creature comforts of Western civilization are too much to let go. That people can't let that go. And I ask these larger channels, how far are you willing to go? Because the people who are living as a result of this colonization, go visit some of these Native American reservations. See, and this is not to make a victimization perspective. This is just to make an acknowledgement of the gaps between what you see on television and what you're told to pay attention to based upon the mainstream media and what's happening on boots on the ground from the human perspective. A lot of these stories will not be addressed and told because once they are told, the people who are in so-called power and the people in the suburbs of that so-called power will lose that power. They will have to give back something. They will have to let go. And that's the thing. People don't see it. People don't see it like that. You don't see that what you're afraid of losing has already been stripped from the people who understand these storylines. What you are afraid of losing was not yours to begin with. It was stolen at the head of the indigenous and the aboriginal people. NASA, the government, the Federal Reserve, the university system that builds up the heliocentric model, the university system that gives all that technology to the military, that sends people across the world to go colonize other lands and build military bases there. All of that was built on the original deception of not knowing your history and being helpless and hopeless in this idea of Western civilization being the peak of monkey evolution. So people do not want to let that go. So in order to make themselves out to be the nice guys, the nice ones, they'll talk about every single other conspiracy theory out there in the world except the foundation that those conspiracy theories are sitting upon. In order to be the nice guys. You're the nice guys. But you're the most dangerous fucking people out there in my perspective, because you nice guys who are only partially nice, naively nice, ignorantly nice, are actually setting up the foundation for the next enslavement program, which is to no longer only enslave people with war and destruction and war equals peace, but this new age perspective of love and light and unity and oneness. Let's open all the borders. Let's bring everybody together. We're all human. The new age is the way to be. We should all just come together. Research what the new age is really doing, where they're coming from. Look at its connection to the United Nations. The United Nations has channelers, had a channeler named Cryon. You can research this yourself. Cryon has spoken at the United Nations at least 7 times. Oprah Winfrey teaming up with Tony Robbins, Eckhart Tolle, Deepak Chopra, coming out with her own network, her own Super Soul Sunday, so-called spiritual perspectives, knowing she at the tippy top of that boule system, controlling the psyche of people. People will buy in to whatever storyline is comfortable for them. For people who are more comfortable with the Oprah Winfrey perspective of so-called spiritual enlightenment and all that other stuff, they'll watch her network and then they'll think everything is just fine because things are getting better. For people who are more inclined to watch conspiracy theories, they'll turn into those channels. They'll watch that. For people who are still caught up in the back and forth checker game of black versus white and the mainstream media, people getting triggered by Fox and MSNBC, they'll tune into those Trump stories. They'll tune into those Alex Jones and TYT stories. They'll watch that shit. People are being controlled psychologically. The new world war right now is the psychological warfare. It is the internet age, the cyber age. It's the information control. This is why Alex Jones calls his channel Info Wars. Because as loud and as so-called passionate as he gets, other people are falling into that trap of believing everything that he believes in and following everything that he follows. The same thing happens in the so-called New Age community. People not only follow what people are saying that is positive to make in your life, people are also following what you say is not worth paying attention to. So if, for example, flat earth channels only focus on the flowery, oh, let's just meet up and have these wonderful meetings and go bowling and have a few beers and talk about how wonderful it is to be flat earthers. It's flat. Everything's flat. Let's do a hand signal. Yes, we're a team. It's camaraderie. Oh, yeah? Great. Where's your camaraderie go when the mainstream completely co-opts your little fucking story of flat earth and packages it in a Glenn Beck suit, packages it in some kind of Fox News network or Bill Maher perspective, puts it on real time with Bill Maher? What are you going to do then? What's going to happen then? You'll just get caught up in the washing machine of garbage and bullshit, and nothing will actually change. You'll just have to go along with the flow of whatever it is the individuals who are manipulating this flow say it's going to be. This is why I'm saying it's so important and so crucial to get ahead of that program and realize the depths of this storyline before they get overshadowed by the mainstream mechanism of distraction and illusion. If more people start talking about the foundations in which these illusions of heliocentrism, evolution, gravity, the Big Bang, if people go to the foundations of why this stuff exists, why are they psychologically mind controlling you? Why does it exist? Not just that it exists, not just what it is. It's flat. It's not a globe. That's just what. My question to these bigger channels is, when will you start getting into the questioning of why this stuff exists? Because you can spend an entire lifetime unveiling and researching why things are the way they are. And how I see it, a lot of people don't go into why things are the way they are and why these illusions exist the way they do, why the race agenda is being triggered, why the alien agenda is being triggered, why flat earth is slowly but surely leaking into the mainstream, why we were lied to in the first place. A lot of people are not realizing and questioning and challenging themselves to go to the depths of these why storylines, because in order to go there, you have to ask questions of yourself. You have to come from the inner questioning. It no longer involves any external observations or blame or guilt anymore when you start asking why, because you directly connect with the ancestors. You directly connect with nature, and you start asking, why has this power grid existed from the inside out, rather than what's going on? Yeah, it's Earth. The Earth is, they're making these videos and CGI. Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful. This is not to have expectations. This is me speaking directly to these individuals. There's a difference. I would say this directly to their faces if I were to see them. This is why I'm saying this right now, because some of them will see this video if you share this or whatever, because a lot of them don't even watch my shit because they think I'm whatever. But some of them will. And some people who know where I'm coming from will also start to share these perspectives and start questioning a deeper layer of why things are the way they are. And where do you fit in that whole storyline? What are your responsibilities to not only yourself, to not only the ancestors, but to the future generations? Are you going to just allow this to be this opportunity to go as deep as possible? This is why I relate the flat earth and the heliocentric deception to all of these storylines, to expand the storylines, not to sell any kind of one perspective of what we should do, but to utilize it to help people see that, yes, these stories have been existing for a long time, and it's not so much about celebrating that we live on a flat earth, but really challenging and removing the cancer that is the illusions and the mechanisms that keep people from empowering themselves and being enslaved Today, more psychologically than anything else. Asking why about these about these stories, rather than just being caught up in the commercial version of what's going on. This is what I'm seeing is what's happening with the so-called flat earth community. We get so caught up in what's going on and celebrating what's going on and throwing fucking parties for what's going on. We never stop to really and ask ourselves why these things are going on. And when we answer those questions of why those things are going on, what are we going to do about it? Individually and collectively. This is why I asked you, whoever you are, how far are you willing to go? What are you willing to let go of? What will you not let go of? Are you willing to remove the entire program, the so-called powers that be program that has led up to today? Or are you willing to just go halfway? Because if you're going halfway or a quarter of the way, you're actually more dangerous than the people who are trying to control the masses as a whole. You know why? Because they use that halfway mentality to sell in the next agenda. They use the people in between that have no conviction in their words, let alone have any understanding, and overstanding of the entire storyline, that are still playing checkers based upon what is promoted by the mainstream media. Black versus white in the whole Trump neoconservative, white nationalism, all that stuff. Alex Jones, TYT, Democrats versus Republicans. That's checkers. Even flat versus globe is checkers when you understand that the mainstream media could easily co-opt this. Flat versus globe is checkers. But once you start getting into the chess game, that's when you start asking why. And you can't ask those questions of why until you've done that inner work. And that's the hardest thing for a lot of people to do, is to do that inner work. This is why this stuff is being avoided. So I wanted to keep this video short, and I'll end this by sharing this, this article, or a part of this article by a blogger that was shared with me with a friend of mine. I think this lady's name is Kucha Reisling, or Reisling, probably Reisling, Baldy. And I just wanted to share this little clip to share kind of where I'm coming from in reference to what I just said, and asking yourself, how far are you willing to go? And also share an example of the mechanisms that are used to make people think things are changing because the so-called powers that be make moves, or they give some kind of doggy treat away. This is the psychological warfare. And if you accept the psychological warfare, then in my eyes, you're no different than the people who are putting the psychological warfare out there. You're helping the agenda. So I'll read this little part of this article, and then the description's in the video. You can, or the link is in the video. I'll link it in the description if you want to read the entire thing. But I felt that this part of this one little clip is very important to see and listen to. So it's pretty simple. Return the land. Let the Wiyot decide how to move forward. You know why? Because it's not giving Indian island away. It's returning it to the rightful owners. Let's say that you have this beautiful house that your family has been in for generations. And one day your dad sits you down and says, "Child, you are about to inherit our family house. FYI, in order for us to gain ownership of the house, We came in the middle of the night and murdered everyone who lived here. And then it was ours. Oh, and also, the extended family and descendants of the survivors of our murder spree live just down the way. They sometimes come and say prayers outside the house. What do? Live in the murder house? It's not yours. Are you gonna go to the living relatives when they come to pray at your house and say, excuse me, excuse me? I understand you're interested in my house on account of it's actually your house that we murdered your family to get. I've decided to give you access to the house sometimes, so you can come and hang out and stuff when you want. I thought about giving it back, but I needed to consider what was best for the community. You understand. When I offer this example to my classes, students have very clear reactions to this scenario. 1, don't steal other people's stuff. It's wrong. 2, if you inherit or benefit from someone who stole other people's stuff, and you know that, you should do what you can to rectify the situation. 3, the easiest way to rectify that situation is to give the darn things back. It's that simple. I'm trying to break it down into its simplest form, but the truth is that Tulawat is so much more than just stolen stuff. Oh, it's stolen, but it's also not just about getting something back. Tulawat is not being returned because the Wayut want it. It is being returned because that is the right thing to do for everyone, for the entire community. We are a part of the community too, us natives. Have been since the beginning of time. Will be always. The water runs through our veins. The land builds us. We pray for the health and well-being of all things. We sing. We dance. We heal the community to heal the land. We heal the land to heal the community. All of the community, everything together. This is the healing that is being avoided. This is the healing that these wounds that are still bleeding today, still festering today, are being avoided. Not only because the people in power will have their power challenged if they tell this story, if they come from this perspective, but the people who benefit from this, something like this story, which is all of the land of the United States, not just the United States, but all of the colonized land, all of the laws that have been created as a result of the maritime admiralty system, the Columbian era, Western civilization. All of these so-called democratic perspectives are not alive today to benefit the people. They are alive today to benefit the people in power. And until these perspectives get burned down, until people acknowledge these storylines and put this at the forefront, any kind of change that you think that you will be doing, from whatever perspective that you come from, you can come from the most beautiful, highest consciousness, most natural perspective in the world. If you do not heal these wounds, they will come back to bite you in the ass sometime. It doesn't matter if you have a flat earth renaissance for the next 10 plus years. If you do not acknowledge the storylines, the information, the history that has led up to today, the history that has led up to the power grid of the people who created the haves and the have-nots, who created the NASA program and the heliocentric model. If those wounds are not healed, I don't give a shit what you think you're going to be doing. It will only go so far. And it might be wonderful for a short amount of time. But if you have the responsibility of healing the soul, the mind, and the body, healing the past, the present, and the future, and you only focus on the future, or you only focus on, at best, the present and the future, and you don't include the foundation to both of those, which is the root system of the history, then you will be not only setting yourself up for failure, you will be setting all of the other people who are in and around your circle up for failure. This is what I'm saying is happening when the people in the so-called flat earth community are putting all their eggs in the baskets of the flat earth going mainstream, and let's just focus on NASA and all this other shit, and not really coming from the perspective of how the power came to be. People use that term all the time. Oh yeah, celebrating all this like we're truthers. We come to this understanding of our reality and our universe, and everything is wonderful because we understand that the so-called powers that be exist, and we're doing something about it because we're revealing their information. Really? Are you? Are you really? Are you exposing them? Or are they using your ass to sell the next enslavement program? This is what the New Age agenda is. It's being used to sell the next enslavement program. And people are buying right into it. And the reason why I connect flat earth to the New Age is because handing over the flat earth opportunity of expanding the storyline of power as a whole, the origins of this story as a whole, letting that go, just handing that over, is inherently a New Age perspective in reference to the New Age community and the mechanism that's being used that is the New Age. And it's dangerous, not only to the individuals, but to the collective as a whole. And they're not really doing anything. You think it might sound wonderful, but it's not. So I'll leave it there. I just wanted to share that, expand upon these previous perspectives that I've been sharing in a lot of these other videos, and also share a good example from the blogger who wrote that article of, the elephant in the room. Are you trying to save and repair Western civilization, which was never designed for the natural relationship between humanity and the earth? It was designed for power, for the so-called powers that be. That's the intention of that program. If you are trying to repair that program, or if you avoid that program, you will help expand the next program that they will promote. The next, it's like Western Civilization Part 2, Transhumanism, the New Age, the Alien Agenda, possibly Flat Earth, CERN, the quantum interpretation of our universe. It's not about the information that's being, it's not the information that's being presented. It's the power that they have to sell you your perspectives in the first place. And if you buy what they're selling, then you get what you get. You deserve whatever it is that you get because you asked for it. And if you're asking for the flat earth to go mainstream and not challenging yourselves to do the information, to do the work, to do the work that they will not do, to share the perspectives that they will not share once they co-opt this storyline. Why not? Why not do it already? You're already aware of it. In fact, you have people like me sharing how important it is. But a lot of people avoid my channel because that work is inner work. And everybody has to do that in their own time. And I understand that. That's why I said I don't have any expectations. I can only share how important it is. I'm not going to say, oh, you need to do this. No, because if you start doing something before you're ready, you're just going to fuck it up. Or create some kind of mechanism that labels it as wrong or bad, or, that's divisive or whatever it is. I understand that. I did that myself. That's the process of growing. So I understand that, which is why I have hands off. But I will share it, and I will leave this. I will share these perspectives, and I'll leave it here. I'll leave it on these videos and let it be for people to come across it on their own. And it'll be the extremes of, something's wrong with you. You're divisive. You're trying to break up the flat earth community. Get the fuck out of my face with all that nonsense. Flat earth is not some catchphrase. Flat earth is not some just thing that you can just package in this little, put a bow on it and sell it. If you do that, then you're taking away from what this realization truly is. And that's normal in this so-called flat earth community. And I also have a problem with that. But it is what it is. People are going to do whatever it is they're comfortable with. So, anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.